Hello, welcome everybody to this, our first briefing on council budgets. My name is Councillor Katie Lomas and I am the Executive Member for Finance, Performance, Major Projects, Equalities, Human Rights and Inclusion. A title so long it didn't fit on the slide. I'm really pleased to be presenting this in really difficult circumstances for councils across the country. But what we intend to do today is set out for you where we're at, the current situation the council is at, and what we intend to do about it to set our budget for the upcoming financial year. And I'm ably assisted by Debbie, and I'll just get Debbie to introduce herself, and then she'll take us through the where we're at, and then I'll take over and talk a little bit about where we go from here, and then we'll be really happy to take comments, questions, contributions, thoughts from people that are in the room, and Kat is keeping an eye on the comments online for us, so if there's anything from that we'll hopefully pick it up. But don't forget that we don't disappear after this session. There are plenty of opportunities to get in touch with us, to ask us or tell us anything you want to know or want us to know. So I'll hand over to Debbie.
You're doing the clicking of the presentation. Hello, my name is Debbie Mitchell. I'm the council's Chief Finance Officer, and as Councillor Lomas said, I'm just going to take you through the first couple of slides, which is around the current financial year, really, and some of the context. So we set the current year's budget back in February of this year, and that outlined that we would need to make savings of 6.6 million. There was significant investment made in the budget, £18 million, which predominantly was for pay and price inflation, but 5 million as well for social care. But equally, when we prepared that budget, we did a medium-term financial forecast, and we recognised that there was an ongoing budget gap of around about £10 million per year going forward. And so as we've gone through this year, so the first, it's the first quarter forecast up there, but it's not changed that much in the second quarter, unfortunately. So as we've worked through this financial year, we've continued to see some significant pressures, particularly in adult and children's social care. And those pressures have led to what we are forecasting at the moment, which is an £11 million in year forecast overspend. Within that forecast, there is still a number of challenging savings to be delivered in this current year. And really the situation that we're in is our overspends, which have been around social care, are recurring, but the way that we've been able to balance our budget over recent years has been through use of one-off funding. So we've got that recurring pressures, and each year we've had to identify one-off funding. So just to explain a little bit about what we've done so far in this year to try and manage our position, we've looked at increased income from fees and charges, particularly around car parking. But internally, we've also put a freeze on recruitment, agency work, and bringing in additional staff, except there have been a number of exceptions, as you would imagine. It's not been a blanket ban. Where it's been essential to deliver frontline services to vulnerable residents, we've continued to allow recruitment. But we've significantly reduced our agency staff. We've introduced a new procurement challenge panel, which is an officer group that looks at all new procurement. It also now looks at extensions and renewals. So it's everything that is being procured by the council. We're continuing to look at how we can use our one-off funds. So we're looking at earmarked reserves and any other reserves that we hold that we can use to offset the in-year position. Some of the other mitigations, we have been doing a review of all our capital schemes to have a look and see what we can delay, what we can defer, and what we could stop doing altogether if it's not adding to our priorities. Other work that's ongoing is we are looking at where else we could reduce spend. So we are looking at what we're spending on highways maintenance, things like ward committees, grant payments, contracts with the voluntary sector. We're going to have a look at those and see where we can make efficiencies or where we can just reduce expenditure. That's work that's ongoing. And again, we're looking at all our current supplier contracts to see where we can find any service reductions, any contract efficiencies. So we're looking at everything, basically every item of expenditure. So that's just a little bit about where we are and what we're doing about it. And I'll hand over to Katie now to tell you about the challenge ahead. Councillor Lomas.
Thanks, Debbie. And I think everyone who works with me here knows that I much prefer to be called Katie. So we've got a massive challenge in front of us for the upcoming financial year. And the context of that is that councils have to set a balanced budget. We have no choice in that. If we don't set a balanced budget, then we have to tell the government that we can't set a balanced budget, and then we lose control of our finances, our decision making around spending, and nobody gives us any more money. So that's the context around this, and I think it's really important to understand that our imperative is to set a balanced budget. And in reality, because of all of the cost pressures that Debbie has mentioned, because of year-on-year fall in real terms funding, because York is at the bottom of the pile when it comes to the council funding pot anyway, we are really, really challenged. And so we won't be able to continue to do everything that we have been doing in the way that we have been doing it and deliver that balanced budget that we have to deliver. So yes, we need to identify savings. We need to consider levels of capital investment, and we need to review and challenge all our budgets. And we've been going through that lengthy and at times difficult process of examining every single aspect of council operations. What are we doing? How are we doing it? Is there a different way to deliver that? Are there other people delivering similar things? So we came into administration, the current administration came in May this year. We've had a wonderful introduction to running the council by having to make in-year savings to address the projected overspend. But that's been a really good lesson for us, I think. And we know that we cannot deliver our ambitious council plan and deliver one city for all on our own. And I think that's a really key message that we want to get out when we're talking about the budget challenges that we face. The only way that the City of York Council can survive this challenge is by looking outwards and not just looking inwards. So we are working within the council, cross-directorate, but also at all of our partnerships to examine what we need to deliver for the people of York, what contributes to our council plan. We're scrutinising everything through our each lens, which ensures that we have equality, affordability, climate emergency and health and well-being and all at the centre of the decisions that we make. We carry on reviewing and refining the medium-term financial strategy, which gives us that look forward over the next 4 years of what we're facing in terms of council budgets. Unfortunately, the government did not deliver anything for local authorities in the autumn statement. There will be not just no additional funding for us, but in fact, some of the one-off funding that we've been relying on in recent years to plug some of the gaps is not going to be continued. And so that leaves us with an even bigger gap to plug. So what we doing? So obviously we're looking at our budget for next year, and nobody underestimates the challenge that we face, and we are taking it extremely seriously. And we have almost a running joke that whenever anybody says anything about anything that they're doing, they back it up with, don't worry, Katie, we're not spending any money. But that literally is our approach to everything that we do. But we can't continue to do everything, and we can't continue to do the things we've done in the way that we've done and deliver that balanced budget. We have to identify savings. We have to identify areas where we can cut the amount that we spend. And we also have to identify opportunities to work in partnership with others, because what we have found in the first 6 months of our administration is that there are lots of people who really do want to work with us. There are people in this city who want to do important, interesting, innovative things, and they need the convening power of the city council to support them to do those things. And we are totally on board with working with everyone to do anything that we can. We will be reviewing our medium-term financial strategy. And I mean, I think we review it more frequently than it's ever been reviewed before, to be quite honest. It's usually reviewed once a quarter. It's being reviewed every couple of weeks at the moment. Because there was nothing in the autumn statement that gave us any hope of relieving some of the pressures on us, that means that we do need to absorb those cost pressures through cuts to our budgets. And there will be cuts, and that means cuts to budgets, and that means there will be things that won't happen or won't happen in the same way, to the same level, at the same frequency in future. That's a fundamental challenge to all council expenditure. It's not just affecting us here in York, it's affecting councils across the country of every different type. And it feels like every few weeks we get a new council issuing the notice to government that they can no longer balance their budget. And our aim and our determination is that we will manage our spending as best we can to remain in control of our finances as long as we can. But it doesn't mean that we are immune to that risk, that we will have to go to government and say we can no longer balance the budget. We are taking a very hard look at capital investment levels, and some of you may have been aware that we made a decision recently around the Castle Gateway scheme to radically change the scheme, not to deliver something different than was hoped for, but to deliver it in a different way, by phasing the project, by making sure that we deliver the aspects that are easier and frankly cheaper to deliver first, so that we can ensure that we're still ambitious, we're still moving forward, we are still doing things, but we are doing them in a way that don't risk our finances. All of those levels of scrutiny, all of those levels of examining everything so minutely take time. And it's going to take quite a lot of all of our time in the coming months to make sure that we address the issues with the in-year budget, that we make sure our budget for the upcoming year is robust, and that we have a backup plan, so that as and when inevitably cost pressures arise that we had no way of managing, that we have some backup plan that we can turn to, so that we don't end up in that situation where we are having to tell government that we can no longer balance our budget. And the kind of things that I think we will see as a city, that we will see change, are in levels of service, frequency of service. And some of that is going to be difficult, and some of it we won't like as residents, and we're residents too, so we won't like it either. But I think that the problem has continued for such a long time. There is no longer any fat left to trim. All of the efficiencies have been made, and anything that we do now is going to have an impact. And I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions or thoughts. And then I'll just check back with Debbie afterwards and make sure we've covered everything. But I'm really keen to hear your thoughts and or questions.
Hi there, Chris from York Business Improvement District. Yeah, I suppose I'd be interested to hear about, well, when are we going to find out the detail on what specifically is going to be cut and what is the potential impact? So I suppose York from an economical point of view, but I suppose as from a residential point of view as well. Sure.
So the process that we go through is, first of all, the plans will go to executive in January. So January's executive meeting will be the first one. And Debbie is now going to remind me of the date when the papers will be
Yes, so,
issued?
the budget proposals will be considered by executive on the 25th of January, and that agenda will be published on the 17th of January.
So that will be when all of the written detail is there. Executive make the decision then to send that to Budget Council in February. So the budget is approved officially by a meeting of full council in February. But the first look that everyone will see will be on the 17th of January when those papers are published.
And I'll just briefly mention as well that the other piece of information that we're waiting for is the local government finance settlement, which we're expecting around the 18th or 19th of December, some Monday, Tuesday next week, I think that is. We should get that before Christmas. That will confirm whether the assumptions that we've been making in our medium-term financial strategy are correct. We might have a refresh at that point, but from everything we've seen so far, we do expect that our analysis is pretty accurate, unfortunately. So.
Did you have a follow-up, Chris?
Yeah, I suppose just playing devil's advocate and thinking about the situation. Is there any information sharing between local authorities in the Yorkshire area, kind of best practice on how to deal with this issue? Because it seems like it's a national issue and things are all going in one direction. But I just wondered if there was kind of any collective thinking on the matter about the future and how we move it in the right direction, as it were.
Absolutely. And it's not just on a local level, that's on a national level as well. So there are networks of people who do a similar role to me across the country through the local government association. There are networks of council leaders through the local government association. There are networks of people who are in a similar role to Debbie across the country, and there's local networks as well where we are sharing kind of the collective woes, and not just that, where we're also making representations to government about the need for change. And for us, that's the need for change to the funding formula, which sees us so badly off comparative to other councils, but also the need for radical change to the way that local authorities are funded and the way that the services we provide are funded, because we rely so heavily on one-off funding that we don't find out about until Christmas week for our budget setting process. We rely really heavily on the limits that the government sets on certain charges that we can make, for example, council tax, but also other charges that we can make. And we rely really heavily on, I guess, the skill and experience of people in Debbie's role of predicting what's going to happen so that we can actually do some planning ahead of the announcement, which is inevitably in Christmas week, leaving us very little time to actually respond to what is in that detail of our funding settlement so that we can prepare our budget. But really, even if they gave us all the time in the world, that wouldn't make a difference, because the problem is we don't receive enough funding to deliver the services that we deliver. And if we don't receive enough funding to deliver all of the services we deliver, and we have an imperative to balance the budget, then that means the only thing that can give is the services that we
Just while I have the opportunity, I suppose we're asking some more questions. We know there's a bigger question mark around the new mayor's office that's proposed for next year in devolution in York and North Yorkshire. Obviously, that's a big if, and I can't ask you specifics about how it will affect the current situation. But just wondering if there is any kind of ambitions to work with the new mayor on how we improve budgets and what are the opportunities from your perspective?
Absolutely. And there will be inevitably opportunities. We don't quite know what they will look like yet, but we've already benefited from the fact that the combined authority is being set up, because we've been able to work with our colleagues on North Yorkshire Council, who are the other part of the combined authority, to agree a set of principles around how we will work together to make sure that both York and North Yorkshire can benefit from the investment that will come through the combined authority into the two authorities that are the constituent parts. And so we've been making the most of those opportunities, but there is a sort of gap at the moment. The order has been laid. There is a gap before there will be the election, and we will have a mayor and a combined authority in place who will be able to look at how that investment is distributed. And I think that although there will be absolutely opportunities there, they won't necessarily help us address the core fundamental challenges that place the pressure on our budgets, which is delivering adult and children's services in an environment where those services are costing so much more. There is so much more demand for those services, but the funding for it hasn't changed in such a long time. It just hasn't kept up. The opportunities through the combined authority are much more around the opportunities for significant capital schemes and for other aspects of council services, but they won't help us with that core budget pressure that we are going to continue to face.
That's great, thank you. I suppose just a final comment from me. Appreciate you offering some of the detail there. Just speaking on behalf of the Business Improvement District, I suppose we'll be keen to see the detail on how the cuts affect public services, specifically, I suppose, in the city centre area, because that's our backyard, as it were. And I assume there'll be an opportunity for businesses to comment post, well, either during or after the executive. Is that, I assume that will be publicised during?
Absolutely. What we are doing now is this week we're doing a number of briefings with a number of different groups across the city. We'll then be presenting the recording of this session with some narrative and inviting comments from everybody across the city to tell us what they think. When the executive meeting happens in January, there's the usual opportunity for people to speak at the meeting ahead of the decision being made. And the genuine offer is there from us that if there are things you want to talk about in relation to the budget, we are more than happy to talk about it. We will have a mailbox, a specific budget mailbox that we'll be letting everyone know about, so that you can get queries into the right place first time round, and we can respond to them. And of course, we're also very happy to hear about any ideas anyone has for how we can continue to deliver the services in the context and the pressures that we're in.
I had a question on the live stream. So John said, I wonder whether you've considered road pricing. By this, I mean that polluting private vehicles are charged a fee for using certain roads within the city centre. This could have two positive outcomes: some income for those who are determined to drive through, and a reduction in pollutants from internal combustion engine vehicles. Additionally, it might make the centre safer and nicer for pedestrians and cyclists.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, John. It is appreciated. We absolutely want to reduce the number of vehicle journeys on our roads, and our aim is to reduce that by 20%. But that needs to be across the city, not just in the city centre. We are at the moment consulting on our local transport strategy and plan, which is a way that every resident can have their say on what we might and should do in order to reduce the number of journeys made by vehicles on our roads. What I would say is road pricing is quite tricky, and there are a lot of complications with that. So it's not necessarily the simple solution, I think, that a lot of people view it as. But we are really happy to engage with whatever anyone wants to talk to us about through the transport consultation that's open right now. So that was a good timing for that one. Any more online?
Make it work. So I'm hearing that the revenue budget is the one that's always difficult, but you're saying also the capital budget is under some pressure as well. And then my supplementary question would be, what's the sort of safe level of reserves and what have we got?
So the reason the capital budget is under pressure is because we have to borrow to fund capital projects, and the repayments for that borrowing come out of our revenue budget.
Yeah.
So we have to be really careful about what level of borrowing we incur, because the repayments come from that revenue budget, and potentially in the most recent one was the discussion we were having around the multi-storey car park on St George's Field, where the £15 million of borrowing to build that structure would have cost us £1.1 million from our revenue budget every year for the next 40 years. And as we don't expect to need multi-storey car parks in 40 years because of the absolute desperate need to drive down the number of vehicular journeys, that is not a safe proposition. So we are looking at capital projects through the lens of, do we need to do that now? Is there a different way to do it? Is there alternative funding for that capital project? That means that we won't have to borrow and take the hit on the revenue budget for the repayments from that borrowing. In terms of reserve, I'm going to ask Debbie to answer that one because it's a specific one.
No, that's fine. So in terms of a level of reserves, every year I have to do an assessment as part of the budget report about A, whether we're setting a robust budget, but B, have we got sufficient reserves? And so it's a judgment call. We've got enough reserves. It's just under 8 million is our general reserve. So that's our kind of rainy day money, if you like. The issue is if we do overspend this year and we have to use that reserve, obviously the first task that I'll be giving to the executive of the new financial year is we need to replace it, and therefore we'll need more savings in next year. So it is there, it is available, it will help us at year end, but we would then have dropped below what I would consider to be a safe level of reserve. So we would immediately then have to find some other savings to top it back up.
It doesn't sound very much. £8 million in the context of the operation as a whole.
Yeah, we have got earmarked reserves for a specific purpose, but yeah, it's around about 5% of our net budget, so it's not huge. But in percentage terms, it's about, we have done some benchmarking with our colleagues in the West Yorkshire and other districts, and we're not bad compared to some others. But yeah, no, you're right, it doesn't sound a lot, does it?
Thank you.
And I think it's helpful to note as well, we do have earmarked reserves that are earmarked for specific purposes, and that some of those purposes are, if we need more money for X, then we have earmarked a reserve for it. But our earmarked reserves have been trimmed pretty much as far as they will go in order to balance the budget in the last few years. So there's little wriggle room, if you like, in those earmarked reserves to plug gaps in funding. And that's why we need to take kind of slightly more dramatic action this year, because over recent years, all of the opportunities to kind of do the easy stuff, I guess, have been taken. Debbie, is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think we've covered everything. Thank you.
Brilliant. There's no more questions. No. Oh, thank you. And I do want to thank you for coming along, and as I say, we will make the recording available so that people who maybe weren't able to come along can see it. We'll have the mailbox, which we'll distribute the details of, so that people can send in their questions or comments or thoughts. And you know, we're always genuinely happy to hear any ideas anyone has about working together in order to continue to deliver the things we need to deliver, because our ambition for the city is huge. You know, we came into administration with some really big ideas, some big plans and ambitions, and those are constrained by the financial situation we see ourselves in. But what we've realised is that we do have that convening power that we can use in lieu of funding to bring in funding from elsewhere to still be able to do some of the things that we need to do. And that's the way that we see, you know, we can move through this period potentially to a point in time where local authorities are better funded to deliver the services that we need to deliver. So thank you very much.